listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. This podcast is all about expanding the conversation around infidelity. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are dealing with infidelity make decisions about how to move forward that are truly right for them. On this show, we feature tools and guidance from my coaching practice, as well as advice from other professionals whose work pertains to the sometimes complicated business of human relationships. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Altagracia Felix, certified money coach and CEO of R2E, revitalize, reinvent, and empower. As a survivor of intimate partner abuse herself, Alta helps women who share this experience rebuild their lives and reclaim their power. Alta's experiences and extensive training inform her unique approach to coaching survivors through the process of healing their trauma and building financially independent lives. To learn more about Alta and her coaching services, go to r2ecoach.com. That's the letter R, the number 2, the letter E, and then coach.com. And of course, the info will be in the show notes. Before we get to today's conversation, this episode is brought to you by me, Marie Murphy, PhD. I provide shame-free, blame-free, non-judgmental relationship coaching. You can talk to me about the things that seem too messy or weird or stigmatized to share with your best friend or your spouse or even your therapist, including but not limited to matters related to infidelity. To learn more about my coaching practice or to schedule an introductory coaching session with me, go to mariemurphyphd.com. Alta, it's so great to have you here today.
I am super excited to be here with you, Marie. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Let's talk about you. Let's start by talking about what you offer your clients and the experiences that in your own life that brought you to doing the work that you do now. So tell us in whatever order you want.
All right. So what I do is I work with my clients one-on-one through a 6-month program that I developed. And in the program, we do a lot of the deepest part of my program is going through what I call the assessment phase. And we just kind of go all the way back to childhood and recount our memories around money and our memories around relationships. And the reason we do that is because what I find is that in those stories, we'll find a pattern. We'll find behaviors that we have ingrained in our subconscious and are repeating in our lives, and they may not be serving us. The things we learn in our childhood really do have an impact on how we show up now. Yeah. And so that's like the biggest thing. I think the most beneficial part of my entire program is that level of awareness that my clients get. But then I'm also getting ready to revamp and do group coaching. And the reason for that is because I want to help more women. And I think there's power in community, right? And having a group of women around you who are going through the same thing as you and who are both on, all of them, right? So I'm thinking 5 are on the same journey as you towards healing and having someone else there besides just having me. And the reason that I came to this line of work is because, as you mentioned, I myself am a survivor of abuse. And I did not find, the type of offering that I'm offering to women. And so I did a lot of the work myself, a lot of the internal healing, a lot of the developing my financial independence on my own to make sure that I just didn't end up in another abusive relationship. And if I did, that I had the ability to get up and leave, because that was a barrier for me. And it's also a barrier for many other women. That's kind of how I got into this, is just taking my own personal experience and noticing that I have a unique set of skills and experiences that I can use to really empower women to get in the driver's seat of their own healing journey.
Yeah, that's amazing. How do we do this? I mean, we can talk about this from so many different angles, but how do we get in the driver's seat when it's really hard sometimes to get out of the passenger seat?
Oh, yeah. So the number one thing, in my opinion, right, is you need to get out of your own way. That's like the first thing you need to do. You have to get out of this trauma space and not look at your experience through the lens of trauma and look at your experience with objective eyes.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And I want to interrupt you to ask you to say more about what you mean by that. What do you mean by getting out of the trauma space?
When you're in the trauma space, you're in a really sad space, right? And so you're kind of looking at everything through, oh, why did this happen to me? How could this happen to me? Things will never be better for me. And everything is just negative and sad. And that's okay, right? Because those feelings are valid, but those feelings aren't going to get you to where you want to be, which is happy and whole and thriving. And so you have to make the conscious decision to recognize that I am not functioning in a mental space that is actually benefiting me to move forward. So if you find yourself that you're stuck and you're just kind of repeating this, poor me story in your head, then you're more than likely looking at everything through this trauma lens.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's such a powerful distinction to say, like, okay, like some really bad shit has happened to me. And like, I've been involved in situations that I do not want to continue to be involved in. And yet there's a difference between acknowledging situations that are undesirable, patterns of behavior and relationship patterns and dynamics that are undesirable, and getting into what I think you're calling the trauma space of like, like, why is this happening? This sucks. It's never going to get better. There's such a fine line between like acknowledging what's going on and like seeing this is really bad and it sucks and kind of like fondling the bad experiences.
Right. I like to call it living in the victim space.
Yes.
And kind of repeating the same tape over and over and over again. And a phrase that I would tell myself that really was helpful was logic over emotion.
Interesting.
And I would repeat that to myself all the time so that when I was reacting to something or trying to make a decision about something, I would ask myself, am I making a decision through logic, or am I allowing my emotions, which weren't equipped enough at that point to be making decisions? And by differentiating that, I was able to not make decisions that weren't going to benefit me, right? So not like jumping to do things because it felt right. Right. And that was really critical for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if this is what you see, but I see sometimes that, when we're in this victim space, victim mode, it's really hard to figure out which way is up when our whole story about ourselves is things happen to me and I don't have control over that.
I love that you said that because I don't agree with you.
Oh, really?
Not you personally.
Tell me more.
I don't agree with people that tell themselves that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Totally. But when someone says that to me, it's like, I don't agree with you because you can, the way that I see it, right? So I asked myself the question, why me? And you can ask yourself that same question in two different ways. It could be why me in a sad, non-productive, non-forward moving way.
Yeah.
Or why me? And then using that to actually objectively look at your experience. Like, why is this happening to you? Because what I found is in all of my experiences is that I was the common denominator.
Right.
So like, what am I doing? And not in a critical or judgmental or like, I'm a terrible person because I made these poor decisions kind of a way. No. What did I do? And what do I need to work on so that these things do not continue to happen to me?
Exactly. I mean, I think I couldn't agree more. It's just a neutral gaze at what's going on. Like if I don't like the results I'm getting in my life, in any area of my life, right, relationship patterns, etc., what needs to change that you actually have the power to change,
right,
in order to get a different result? And the thing that you have the power to change is you. Yeah.
1000%. It is literally probably the only thing you have the power to change.
Amen.
And recognizing that, right? I mean, it's just what you said. Like, there's just so much power in what you just said, right? So recognizing that you have the power and the ability to change the one and only thing you control, which is you.
Right.
And knowing that when you're moving forward into new relationships is also very, very important. It's an important skill to develop.
Yeah.
And to learn. So when you're trying to heal, look at yourself through objective eyes. Don't shy away from the truth because you don't like what you see.
Right. Right. And I think there's a layer of having compassion for ourselves in addition to being, very honest with ourselves about what's going on. That's really important here because, even if we've been involved in situations in our lives that we don't want to repeat, that were very difficult and painful at the time, these experiences can end up being, first of all, we can survive these experiences, number one, but number two, they can end up being such powerful teachers for us that lead us to go on to do amazing things like the work that you're doing.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's I guess what you were saying, I don't know if you've ever read the book Radical Acceptance by Tara Bach.
Yeah.
So I was doing that and I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting when that happens? You think you've created this practice and then you realize that there are 5 books about it and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I wish I would have read the book, but if you
written it.
Right, even that would be better. But I think that ties back to what you were saying with the compassion, right?
Yeah.
Looking at your experience through objective eyes with compassion, no judgment, and full acceptance for what comes up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always say you can't accept 95% of the story and expect to heal.
Oh, damn, that's good. Yeah. That is so good. So the way I interpret that is you can do all the work, you can work on changing your beliefs about yourself. But if you don't really take on the hardest things, the things that seem the most impossible to change, if you're not willing to kill the sacred cows, you may never get what you want. And exactly. I find, and this is true for myself as much as clients, that, the stories that are the hardest to let go of are sometimes the poor me stories. The so-and-so did this to me and that was bad. And now I'm hurt forever and everything is ruined. That kind of story can be really hard to let go of because it's more comfortable than saying, well, what if I were actually in the driver's seat here? What if I'm not the passenger anymore?
You get to rewrite your story.
Yeah.
That's what you get to do.
Yeah.
You get to look back, like you said, look back at that experience and what powerful transformation can you get from that?
Yeah.
Take the good and dump the bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about your thoughts about why sometimes we have such a hard time dumping the bad, letting go of the bad and allowing for the good.
Because it's comfortable.
You see a fair amount of that. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
I bet you see that pattern playing out a fair amount.
So I'm very fortunate that the clients that I have right now are not stuck in that state. And they are very, very open to when they might trip over that. And I point it out to them, right? So they're really good about repivoting and getting back on track. And so I'm really grateful for that. But I think part of that is because on my website, I clearly say, if you're not ready to do X, Y, and Z, then you're not ready for the level of depth that I'm going to take you into. But what I do see with other people, so people who aren't necessarily my one-on-one clients, but who I support, right? Because I still offer support to women who might not be ready in other ways, like helping them come up with escape plans or thinking through what life is going to be like afterwards and helping them figure out their plans on things that need to be in place. And what I find, the reason it's hard for them to let go of the story is, I think, twofold. One, because it's comfortable to stay there. They've been there for so long.
Yeah.
Right. And then two, there's a lot of shame. And I think there's a lot of guilt in possibly accepting that just a slither of something you did might have contributed to that situation. Yeah. And so if you admit to that, then I think most women feel like if you admit to that, then you kind of take on the burden of that experience. Somehow it was your fault.
Right.
And so what I try to tell women is no matter what, it's not your fault. You cannot take on the flaws of someone else. That person did that. That's their burden, their thing they need to work through, their thing they need to carry. It's not your job or your responsibility to have to be worried about anything that other person did. But it is your job and your responsibility to accept whatever it is that you might have done, right? And so I always like to say that and follow that by saying indecision is a decision.
Yes. Yes, totally.
Yeah. And that was my thing. Like, I chose to stay.
Right.
I chose not to leave. I chose whatever options I chose. And therefore, it is what it is. And when I finally vocalized that was that 5% that I wasn't vocalizing because I was in pity me mode.
Yeah.
But when I finally vocalized it, I was able to just switch that, get out of that trauma lens and start to look at it like, okay, that's done. Like, what next?
Right.
And so I think that's the reason why it's hard to get out is that it's comfortable.
Totally.
And the fear that if somehow they contributed in any way, and I don't even like to say contributed, right? Because it sounds like I'm saying like purposely, and I really don't mean that.
Right.
Like I said, indecision is a decision. And that's what I mean. Like, let's keep this broad and let's really be objective. Like, what can you do differently next time? And so indecision for me was something I could do differently, meaning in my new relationship, I'm voicing myself when something isn't right with me. In my new relationship, the things that I value and that are important to me are going to be said and they're going to be at the forefront, right? Because those are things I didn't do before.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And, well, there's a lot of things that I love about what you just said. One is like, it's okay to like reflect on yourself and how you've participated in situations without it being about how to divide blame.
Yes.
And I think that's also true for the people that have quote unquote done us wrong or have been, the abuser or the perpetrator of behavior that we don't want anything to do with anymore. And I think, there's something that I sometimes see with clients is, people who are so theoretically, like supportive of the idea that like we all do bad shit sometimes. Like sometimes people do things that just aren't great. And so they have compassion for their partner or, the person who did the behaviors that they don't want anything to do with anymore. But sometimes they take that a little too far. And it's like, well, they couldn't help it. Like they had all these bad experiences growing up. This is just the way they are. And it's kind of like saying, I don't see how anything different is possible for me.
I like how you said that. Everything you just said. And so I'm going to start at the top and work my way down.
Yeah. Go for it.
So at the top, like there is a balance between when you can say, the term hurt people.
Yeah.
Right. But there's a balance where this is just who I am and this is just what it is. Bullshit.
Yeah.
This is who you choose to be and you choose to stay comfortable in that space.
Right.
And that's okay because that's your life and you get to do that. Right.
Yep.
But
totally.
I don't have to sit here and endure that, like you said. And I think it is important not to put blame and forgiveness, I think, is important in that because you point blame when you haven't forgiven. Because when you forgive, you forgive, you let it go. And so I think that's a critical component of getting to a space where you're able to recognize that, yes, someone might have suffered and yes, someone might have gone through things and therefore they are acting in ways that aren't necessarily beneficial for you and don't add value to your life. That means there's things that they need to work on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you have to you get to make that decision. Like, are you going to stick around for it or are you going to go take care of your own self? Because your only responsibility is yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
I might be selfish in saying that, but
yeah, I mean, people get so tripped up on the concept of selfishness, but one way that we can talk about this is like there's three kinds of business. There's your business, there's their business, and there's God's business or the universe's business or like the cosmic business. And there's only one kind of business you can do. But so many of us spend all of our damn time trying to do the other kinds of business that we can't really do.
I love that. I've never broken it down that way, but I love the way you just did that because that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I should attribute that to its source. I think Martha Beck came up with that concept, but she might not have. She's probably the first person I heard it from. Your business, their business, and God's business.
I love that. And that means the only thing you need to be worried about is your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that goes back to this like whole notion that it's like, it's okay to recognize that someone has hurt you because they're hurting.
Yeah.
I like to say people are assholes because they suffer. And it's like, it's great to recognize that that's how it works. And that's part of like what's going on out there in the world and in our relationships. But that doesn't mean that you have to deal with someone hurting you. You don't have to accept someone hurting you.
Right. Right. And I have kids. So that's something that I tell my kids. Like, when they have difficult experiences in school is, that kid might be going through something tough in their lives. And you get to choose whether that person is your friend or not. And so just because that person isn't happy or, they're having a tough time doesn't mean they get to treat you badly. But you get to choose that. Like you get to make that decision on whether you want to be their friend and support them a little while longer, or if you think you've seen enough and it's time for you to go. But the reason I do that is because my mom didn't do that for me. And I think, when I look back at my own experiences, I've had very toxic friends growing up that I kind of endured a lot with, and that translated into my relationship.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important notion to understand is that hurt people.
Right.
And that means they need to go and get that support and get the help that they need so that they can change if that's what they want to do.
Right.
It's up to them.
Exactly. And if they don't want to change, the power is ours to decide if we want to be involved with them or not.
Right. And I think that's critical. I think we forget that. Like when we're in relationships, I think we forget that we still have the ability to leave, right? Or to vocalize ourselves.
Yeah.
And give the other person an opportunity to make adjustments if they so choose to.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk about this some more because I think this is so important. I think sometimes like people get into relationships and it's like they've entered like a vacuum of sorts where like the relationship becomes more important than other things like your own individual self and your needs as an autonomous being. And it's like, well, I can't speak up. I can't talk about what I really want. I can't confront you with the problems that I'm experiencing or perceiving in this situation. How do you see that play out?
I think there's a lot of inner work that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens more often when you haven't taken the time to be alone. I think being alone is such a beautiful space to be in because you got to get real with yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this from experience. I'm speaking this because when I was by myself, I was lonely and I cried and I felt like that wasn't normal, right? Like I should be okay with being by myself and reading and doing things that I love and watching movies with a glass of wine and chocolate cake if that's what I want to do and being totally cool with that
right now.
Right. And so like when I finally started to do that, I value my alone time so freaking much. And so I feel like that disconnect from yourself, the disconnect from your own individual desires is what kind of contributes to you going into a relationship and getting caught in what you said, in something that resembles a vacuum. Like you don't exist anymore. Everything is for the sake of the relationship. And I think that's a lot of self-love that needs to happen. Like there's as if your identity is tied to the success or the failure of that relationship. And it's not, right? Like it's not. But I also think it's cultural, right? So you see like Cinderella, like all those little princess movies we saw growing up. And the thing that kind of just shoved into our heads, the guy coming and saving us. And why is a guy coming to save us? That's a whole nother thing. Right? We can save ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think it's conditioned. And we have to make being alone a normal thing. Like the whole people don't like to go to movies by themselves, don't like to go out to eat by themselves. Like all of that are indicators that there's more work that needs to be done. Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, I don't know anyone really who was taught that the most important human relationship we have is the one that we have with ourselves. And learning how to do that later in life when we're older and we have like habits set and, patterns that we've experienced in relationships that we're in or not in or whatever can be kind of an odd thing. It does seem strange sometimes to think about intentionally spending time by ourselves, even if we're partnered, and intentionally taking ourselves out on a date or an excursion and learning how to feel our own feelings and learning how to get in touch with what we're thinking rather than, for instance, trying to anticipate someone else's needs and feelings all the time. It's a process. I mean, it's a skill set that's so important and yet isn't really talked about, much less systematically taught.
Not at all. Not at all. And I think, on top of what you were saying, creating those individual types of relationships with yourself. I always say you're your longest relationship, period.
Right.
Nothing else to be said after that, right?
Right.
Period. But even fostering relationships with other people outside of your relationship, I think that's important too. So having friends, staying connected with your family, right? If you have that relationship. Because we are creatures that do want connection, right? So we need to make sure that we're fostering that and that our significant other isn't the only source of connection to another human that we have. And when we don't do that, I don't think we can grow. I don't think we grow or evolve or really thrive in a relationship where your entire life is about that relationship.
Yeah. For sure. What are some of the things that you teach your coaching clients in your program about how to begin to build that relationship with yourself?
So we do a life wheel as one of the things that we do. I walk through with them and we identify values, what are your values? And then the other thing that I do, which is going to sound crazy, but we do a SWOT analysis.
Oh, cool. Yeah, sure.
But the reason, right, is because...
Wait, first tell everyone what that is.
Oh, so a SWOT analysis is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Mm-hmm. And so we do this with money management and relationship at the forefront, right? And the reason for this is because, like I said, awareness is my number one thing, because without it, you can't do anything. If you're not aware of the things that you need to be aware of, you can't make any changes. You have to name it in order to change it. And so by doing that, they do tend to find that they need more self-care time, right? That they need to spend, more time doing yoga or meditating or journaling, and reconnecting with themselves. But another thing that I do with them is what I call a no-no list. So the way that, this, right? So the way our brain works is that it only likes to see what it believes to be true. So if you tell yourself, this person over here is the greatest person on planet Earth, you will not see any red flags. Yep. They'll be everywhere, but you won't see them. Because you told your brain that this person is the greatest. So therefore, it only wants to see the greatest.
Yep.
And so what I do with my clients is we're going to create a list of all the things we absolutely do not want to have in a relationship.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So kind of tricking the brain to focus on this thing. Right. So no matter how great this person is, no matter what they bring to the table, what we're open to whatever comes, but what we're not willing to accept are things that we have over here. And I try to keep it short. So 5 things, nothing crazy, and 5 things that you cannot change, that you have no control over. Right. So it's not sex, because people can learn how to do that better. Right. It's not weight, because people can go on a diet and lose weight. Right. It's real concrete things that are characteristics of someone that you just don't want, you won't be happy with. And that's the way that I phrase it. And so the reason for that is you focus on that list. So you're open to new relationships, but you will pay attention to the red flag. Because if this person does this one thing that you don't like, or that doesn't resonate with you, then you check that off the list, and then this ends here. Mm-hmm. It ends right there. And
so
I think
clarifying deal breakers.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep. Yeah. Rather than having a list of just these are the things that I want. That's a good list to have, but it can't be the list of focus. That's what I had. And what I found is when I threw that away, my significant other, I would have never talked to him.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We would have never been together. He wasn't my type.
Uh-huh.
But we were friends.
Right.
And so when I decided, I'm just going to focus on this no list and be open to whatever comes, and he is everything I wanted and more. right? So
Aw.
like he's respectful, he's patient, he's kind. I work like 12, 13-hour days. What is he doing? Supporting me,
Yeah.
right? And he
Yeah.
goes to college, like he's in
Yeah.
school too. So
Yeah.
it's just like a nice natural balance. Expectations is something else that I teach my clients. Like you need to not keep your expectations low, but keep your expectations realistic. And don't allow someone who could be potentially a great match for you not come into your life because they didn't reach whatever expectation you had that just was like superficial.
Right. Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point. Like some of our preferences point to our true north, like our absolute values, our non-negotiables, our price of admission, and that stuff, it's so important to be crystal clear on it. And like,
Mm-hmm.
no, like this is a deal breaker for me. Like you're wonderful, but like this one thing is so important to me that I just can't, like, I'm just not going to do it. And it's not a judgment of you. It's just, it's a boundary for me.
Right.
But on the other
Right.
hand, I think so many of our preferences don't really serve our desires. Like we want to experience love and connection and intimacy and joy and all of these things, but we want it to come in a certain package or with
Right.
a certain like set of superficial attributes associated with it. And when we're looking for those things, I think that our preferences can really lead us astray.
Yeah. Yeah. What I think you can find is you'll find fun. You'll find the whirlwind of love, right? You'll find all those things and you very well might find love, but the likelihood of it actually being someone that you can sit next to and say, I like this person.
Yeah.
Like I like this human being. And like me and my significant other, if we were to break up tomorrow, we would both be sad, but we would both be okay.
Yeah.
Because we maintain our individuality and then we come together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. How do you help people rebuild their capacity to find trust in others
Mm.
after they've had experiences where they feel like their trust has been violated?
I start with they have to trust themselves. I
Yeah.
really think that at the core of we show up externally how we feel internally. And so they really have to learn to trust in their own ability to make the right choices for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so kind of creating compassion. So forgiveness, my clients do a forgiveness assignment if I feel that they need to. And a lot of times they have to, I don't make them, right? Because they're individual, but I request. It's something that I tell them it's optional. They get to do it. But if they don't do it, then they have to tell me why.
Oh, I love
That's
it.
Like, let's reflect on why you can't. And even just doing that does a number. But one of the people they have to forgive is themselves.
Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah.
have to forgive yourself. And you can't hold grudges. You can't have regrets. You have to understand that all the things that you have gone through, good or bad, served a purpose, right? And you get to choose what that purpose is going to be.
Right. I'm so with you on that. And moreover, like, let's say that, like, you know, I mean, there's just no value in holding on to grudges and regrets. There's just like, I
None.
don't know what people think they're going to get out of doing that. It just
None.
doesn't work the way you think it's going to. What's that old expression? Anger does more damage to the vessel in which it is stored than to the object on which it is poured. Something to that effect.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to look up this
I
quote
might be wrong
really
about
quick.
the wording.
There's this quote that I have on my forgiveness assignment. So my clients get it all electronically, but there's a quote on there that if they were to complete the assignment and get to the end of it, they're going to see this quote. And I put it on there on purpose because I think it is such a marvelous quote. And here it is. It's loading right now. And the quote is, "To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you."
Yes. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Oh, and here's another good forgiveness quote. Marianne Williamson points out astutely that forgiving someone does not mean you have to have lunch with them. Like, it doesn't mean like, oh, I forgave him or her or them or whomever. Now we're going to be best friends, or like, now we're going to get back together. Like, or now like everything's cool. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you have to have a relationship with them going forward. It just means you put down the hammer. You put down all the thoughts. You free yourself to move on.
You break the chain.
Yeah,
Like,
you break the chain.
You break the chain of that experience.
Yeah.
Because the longer you hold on to the anger, the longer you hold on to the resentment or the hate, which is such a powerful word, but we do feel that, right? Like anything that just isn't a positive situation. Like when you think about it, does it add value to your day or does it bring your whole day down? Right. And so letting go of those things and understanding that, whatever that person might have been going through is just whatever they were going through, but also understanding that it's not your fault. And the moment you let that person go, it's the moment you let yourself go. And I like that you said that. Like I tell people, and you were talking about lunch, but I tell people I can have a full blown conversation and sit at the table with my exes and feel nothing. Like feel nothing, no anger. Like I see them and they'll pat like, hi, how are you doing? I'm doing great. How are you?
That's amazing.
Like, yeah. Like I have no, nothing that I feel towards them. No anger, no hate, no love. But it's more like, like one of my exes, his kids are doing great. And every now and then he'll call like, oh yeah, the kids are doing great. I'm like, fantastic. Like, I'm so happy for them. Good. Right. And then if he tries to go into, but I did this for you. It's like, look, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not entertaining this. But I'm so happy that you're doing well.
Right. Right.
And what I'm saying that to say that let them deal with that shit. It's not our shit. I let it go. I forgave him. And it's funny to see, but I feel like when you get to that point where you are just like, and it doesn't mean that we're friends because we're not friends. We're not talking all the time. I don't call them. They just so happen to call me or I run into them somewhere, but I don't run. I'm not like, hiding. I don't feel like this boiling thing inside. I remember feeling all these things, which is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The moment I forgave, I set myself free.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's so great because sometimes it's like we think that by continuing to harbor anger for someone else, it's like we're upholding the moral order of the universe and we're, hanging on to our ideas about what's right and wrong. And if we were to let those go, then who knows what would happen? Everything would fall apart and like our life would have no meaning and everyone else would just do all kinds of crazy things. And it just doesn't work like that.
Not at all. You will live, I live a much better life reading a book. Reading a book that I like, right? Learning something new, adding value to my brain so that I can add value to the lives of the people that come across my path, rather than like every time we have a conversation, I'm talking about my experience.
Yeah, right.
I think that's a good indicator to know. And I'm talking about abuse specifically, but like this is like with all forms of trauma. And just I had a conversation with a lady the other day, on topic, but a little off, where she was talking about infidelity, right? And how she feels like she forgave her significant other, but every time he does something, she brings it up.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And the first thing I said to her was just like, well, you didn't forgive him then.
Yeah.
Like plain and simple, you didn't forgive him. And if you're at the point where, you just don't feel anything other than anger, then it might be time to walk away.
Right.
That I think for me, the whole point was that whole forgiveness statement, like, oh, I forgave him. But, sometimes then I'm like, then you didn't forget.
Yeah.
Don't say you forget. You didn't forgive. You forgave maybe a half of the story.
Right. Right. And I think, part of what happens in situations where something's happened in a relationship that we want to maintain, but we don't like the thing that's happened, is we're in a hurry to get to everything being okay. Like we want to get past the, like, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm feeling all of these uncomfortable emotions. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I think about all this. Like we're in such a hurry to get through that stuff well, not through it, but like around that stuff or over that stuff and get to like, everything's cool, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to let yourself be where you are. You have to allow yourself to have the default response that you're going to have and think those thoughts and feel those feelings and allow that to be true for a moment if you want it to change.
Right. Accepting whatever is in that moment. And working through that. I think what you just said is so powerful because it's so true. It's so true. And it's just as simple as that.
Right. It's so simple, but yet we resist it. And I mean, for good reason, like we're not really taught how to do this. We're not really taught how to allow uncomfortable experiences to be really uncomfortable.
Right. We're not, I think it's like to our emotional intelligence, but even like if we talk about, and I think all of this starts in the childhood when, if you had parents that was just like, don't cry.
Right.
Or, like just
Don't
little
be
things
sad.
like that. Right.
Yeah.
And
don't
it's
get
just
angry.
Like, right. All those things translate. And even in school, like when you start going to school and what the school system ingrains into you, it's just so many little things that we have to pay attention to. And I think it's just when you become an adult, you kind of, at this point in time, we kind of just have to do the work to figure it out. And like you said, just be okay with however we feel in the moment. But I think this is a systematic change that needs to take place in our culture altogether, where men, boys are also allowed to feel, to have feelings, right? To feel the feels.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I could not agree more. I mean, we need a sea change in terms of how we collectively understand and approach emotion and all of the, the difficult aspects of the human experience instead of just glorifying the so-called nice aspects of the human experience. Mm-hmm. And perhaps nowhere is this more true than within the realm of romantic relationships. Everybody loves a couple, everybody loves a love story. People love marriage and, all those kinds of things. But like, that's only part of how people experience relationships.
Mm-hmm. I tell my boyfriend, the way that I like to explain our relationship, I say is steady. So we never had like a roller coaster high or a roller coaster low. We've pretty much been steady, like up and down on this steady line. But I feel like it is the most, like the healthiest relationship I have ever had. Because in the past, it was super high. Like, oh my God, the man of my dreams. Things are so great.
Right.
All these things. And in this relationship, we entered it with like friendship as the core and then individuality as the next pillar of our relationship. And understanding that, right? But like you said, like we're not comfortable with all of it. Like we still have our super high loves and still have our super low loves. It's just not as crazy,
right?
As most relationships. They're more on a steady line, a normal flow of like, well, now we need to do things to inject love back into this relationship. Like maybe we need to go away for a weekend, get some alone time, or you buy me flowers, or I run a hot bath for you, and we put the kids to bed early. I think it's that part. Like people expect it to be just wonderful all the way through, and I think that's part of what leads to the whole like, I don't love this person anymore.
Right. It's not the same. Yeah, absolutely. Engaging in the relationship requires us to actually be present and actually engage. It doesn't just happen.
Mm-hmm. Me and him took a, have you read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
We took the quiz when we were still friends.
Oh yeah.
And so, but it just so happened that we pretty much were a match. Like we both communicated love and understood love in a very similar way. And for us is like acts of service, right? And quality time. And for me, it's physical touch, which he isn't physical touch, but I'm physical touch. He's, I think, acts of service and quality time. And I'm acts of service and physical touch and then quality time. So we're really close. But I think just that, like just putting in the effort to really try to understand what the other person is like, where are they coming from? And what I really loved about that book is what they taught you is that your love, the way you express love might not be the way the other person perceives it. So you need to understand, actually take the time to understand who's sitting across from you at the table. Yeah. Right. And not force that person to accept love the way you want to dish it out. Right. And putting in the effort to actually express love to that person in the way that person understands.
Yeah. So true. And understanding that, like, your partner also may not know exactly what you prefer in terms of expressing love. It's funny. Like, I think the flip side of feeling like a victim of our partner's bad behaviors is expecting our partners to be kind of like an emotional, like Pez dispenser for us. Or some people say like an emotional vending machine. Like we want our relationships to be just like this automatic source of good feelings all the time, no matter what. Like we don't even have, like, I like the Pez dispenser thing, metaphor better because we don't even have to put in a quarter. We want to just be able to be like, oh, where's my treat? Like give me my dopamine hit. I'm ready.
Right. I think that's even true. And like to bring it back, it's like with the whole, when you're getting into a new relationship after, so let's say, you break away and you're ready to start anew, you can experience a lot of triggers going into that relationship. Right. And so being aware, as you were saying, of communicating with your partner and making sure that they're aware of what it is that you need, and or what are they doing that might be triggering you and stuff like that. Like taking accountability for your part in that relationship and not putting it all on the other person.
Right.
I think it's important.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, like in all contexts, that's so true. And all of that begins with actually having a relationship with ourselves. So we know like who we are that's coming into the relationship and what we prefer in the relationship and how we want to engage with others.
Right. All of that is so freaking important. Like you said, you first. And Will Smith, I keep referencing someone. As you can see, I'm like an absorber of information. But Will Smith said, it is not my responsibility to make you happy. It is your responsibility to make you happy. And that to me is like golden because it makes so much sense. Because how can you walk into a relationship with a half full cup?
Yep, absolutely. We can create happiness together. And that is dependent on us being able to create happiness ourselves. Right.
Because if this person is coming in and their cup is full and yours is half empty, well, now you're depleting theirs in order to fill your own. Right. Yeah. And so now that person isn't really ever going to be fully happy. And you're still not going to be fully happy unless you take all his shit out of his cup. So you kind of have to I think being, like you said, being self-aware, be in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
Know what matters to you. And get that clarity and take the time to do the work and dedicate yourself to that.
One last question for you, Alta. How do you teach people to leave the past behind and not bring the troubles that they've had in past relationships into their projections on their current partners or future relationships?
By rewriting those relationships.
Ooh, tell me more.
So, for example, if you were to look back, I'll give you an example of my own. So when I look back at my ex and I'm looking at how terrible he was, right? And all these things. And, I'm in this new state. He made like a lot of money and wouldn't even give me $2,000 for me to go find my own apartment. Like I can go on and on and on about how terrible it was, right? But the moment I stopped doing that and I looked back and I said, well, what was the purpose of that really? And then I couldn't find a purpose for myself. Other than the purpose that I contributed. Like this relationship was about me contributing, even though I suffered. But who benefited were his kids. Right? They go to a fantastic school because of me. Because before I came into the picture, they were going to one of the really terrible public schools in the area. And they were reading at like first and kindergarten grade level, and they were third and fourth grade students. And so when I moved down here with him, I demanded that we had a home in an area that had a decent public school system because I'm coming from Connecticut. My kids go to a good school. I'm not moving to Philly with my children to put them in a shitty school. And so we moved to this nice area and his kids, I asked him to transfer them. I'm like, don't leave them there. Like this, we're here, move them. By the time I left that relationship, they were all reading at grade level, right? Wow. And they were all excelling in school. The bad behaviors and the getting suspended and all that stuff that they were experiencing at that school, they no longer experienced at this school, right? I gave them structure, right? So wake up, brush your teeth, do these things, breakfast, packing their lunches, writing them notes, like all these little things to inject love.
Yeah.
And so when I walked away, it broke my heart because I was tied to them. Yeah. But I feel like my purpose in that relationship was to help them have an opportunity at having a better life. And so when I'm working with my clients and I'm trying to help them change the way that they look at their experience so that they don't carry it into the new one, it's that. Like, let's look at it and what was the purpose of that relationship? And sometimes the purpose isn't for you. Sometimes it's for someone else.
I love that. That is so good. Sometimes I think we're so focused on like, what am I getting out of this? Rather than like, what have I given in this situation? That's sometimes so much more importance.
Yeah.
That's great. That's such a good story.
Thank you.
Alta, it's been such a pleasure talking with you.
It has. I've enjoyed this conversation and all of the areas that we've navigated into. This is super cool. I'm happy you opened this up for me to come and join you here.
Oh, well, pleasure having you. Tell everyone how they can find you one more time.
Okay. They can go to my website, which is r2ecoach.com. They can find me on Instagram at R2ecoach, or you can find me on Facebook by my name, Alta Felix, or abbreviated name, Alta Felix. And I am totally open to people just DMing me or sending me private messages, because I understand that the people that I support, it's a very private situation. And so if you want to talk to me first before you decide to go ahead and book a consultation, that avenue is open to you. I freely have these conversations.
Amazing. Thanks again, Alta. And thanks to all of you for listening. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, we hope you'll head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.